Farm Week is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, farmers are reminded to make sure they're in compliance with state truck laws as they harvest.
Robotics is a very popular activity that is fun while it introduces young people to high-tech machinery. Mississippi State University is helping those interested in robotics through a summer camp.
In Southern Gardening, see how one man turned his farm equipment collection into a distinctive part of his landscape.
In the markets, some analysts think corn prices are too cheap, while cattle prices are expected to hold and maybe even improve. Brian Williams will have analysis.
In the feature segment, September is National Honey Month. You don't have to buy honey from overseas. The chances are good you'll find some at a local Mississippi beekeeper.
They cure it to a 17% moisture, and when they get the moisture correct, they put a wax cap on it. And once they've capped an entire frame and then they've capped an entire box, I take that whole box with me to the house to be harvested.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week.
As the harvest season begins to get into high gear in Mississippi, growers are reminded to not run afoul of the state's truck laws and weight limits.
Leighton, the Mississippi Department of Transportation says that farmers can avoid harvest delays and fines if they adhere to the state's licensing and fuel laws. That was the message delivered recently to a joint meeting of the Delta Council Ginning and Cotton Quality Committee and the Southern Ginners Association. The Delta Farm Press reports that MDOT's Enforcement Director Willie Huff said that farmers bringing in out-of-state custom harvesting crews and haulers need to make them aware of state laws. Huff said that his department stopped an extraordinary number of out-of-state trucks last year that didn't have Mississippi apportioned or temporary tags. Now, out-of-state trucks must have a 3-day permit or a temporary Mississippi tag. They must buy fuel in the state, and they must have a valid commercial driver's license and proper insurance. As far as weight is concerned, all trucks in or out of state must obey posted limits for roads and bridges. The MDOT does have an interactive map on its website which shows MDOT posted weight and axle limits in the state. For $25 per vehicle, there is a permit that can allow a 5-axle truck to run 84,000 pounds or 4,000 pounds over the legal limit for that particular truck's configuration. The permit, however, does not allow you to violate the posted limit for a bridge. If the bridge's limit is 54,000 pounds, for example, you can't cross it with an 84,000 pound truck.
Getting young people to be interested in technical subjects can be difficult, but robotics is a hot activity with many youth. Mississippi State University held its first 4-H Robotics Academy this summer. Young people and adult volunteers were trained in the craft of building robots. Educators and engineers from elite institutes taught the participants how to build, program, and operate the robots at the week-long event. Farm Week's Amy Taylor reports from Mississippi State University.
Whether we realize it or not, robots are all around us. They're in our vehicles, in our smartphones, even in household appliances. At the 4-H Robotics Academy, educators from NASA Stennis Space Center and Carnegie Mellon University spent 5 days training participants how to program robots. Emma Saylor, projects coordinator for NASA Education Space Center, explains.
It's something that they can build. It's something they can get excited about. They have to tell it what to do. And if they don't tell it correctly, they have to go back and redesign it. But when they get it right, they're really excited. It uses math, it uses science, and they don't realize that, I think, a lot of times. They're just playing with the robot, but they really are learning a lot. We've been doing a lot of obstacle courses. They can use a light sensor to follow a line. They can use an ultrasonic sonar sensor to detect distance. A sound sensor that will clap and make the robot move when it's really loud and make it stop when it gets really quiet. And then a touch sensor also, where they can run into something kind of like the Roomba vacuum where when it runs into a wall it turns.
Saylor says these challenges enhance teamwork and communication skills. In addition, software engineer at Carnegie Mellon University, Timothy Freeze, talks about why these skills will be needed in the future.
We're going to need these future innovators to make future robots, future electronics, future technology. Think about medical robots, and the abilities that they're able to make smaller cuts, smaller incisions, do more delicate procedures than even the human hand's able to do. So we have all of this technology, but in the future we're going to need someone to create new versions of it, or to be able to maintain it, or to be able to update it. And without having students exposed to that now, no one's going to be available to do it. And so those jobs will slowly go away, or even worse, they'll be, sent all across the world, taking away from American jobs.
The 4-H Robotics Academy was filled with all things robot, from the activities to the decorations, even to the snacks. From Mississippi State University, I'm Amy Taylor reporting.
If you're interested in the 4-H Robotics Academy for next summer, contact Dr. Mariah Smith at 662-325-3226. We'll also have this telephone number on our Farm Week webpage and Facebook page.
Well, as we enter September, let's check on the Mississippi Weekly Crop Report from the Mississippi Ag Statistics Service in Jackson. This report reflects conditions as of last Sunday, September 1st. As we look at topsoil moisture in the state, it is getting dry. Surplus in only 1% of the state, adequate 55%, but short in 27% of Mississippi and very short in 17% of the state. Now, one of the problems with drying out is we need some rain for late crops, but we also need no rain for harvest. So it's a catch-22 sort of situation. So we look at Mississippi corn, only 34% of the crop is harvested. The average is 64% for the state. Mississippi soybeans, 9% of the crop is dropping leaves, and normally it's 37% for this state. As we look at Mississippi cotton, only 10% of the crop has open bolls, 49% is the average for the state. Mississippi rice, only 5% of the crop harvested as of the 1st. Normally it's about 27%. Mississippi peanuts running about on average, maybe a little ahead. 4% of the crop has been harvested. Mississippi sweet potatoes, also about on average, 4% of the crop harvested as of the 1st. Well, have you ever wanted to show off one of your favorite collections, but you didn't know how to do it? Well, in this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman says if your collection is weatherproof, follow the example of one gardener who combined old farm relics and colorful garden plants.
Some homeowners just have that eye for creating landscapes from repurposed materials. A great example is my friend Reggie, who collects old farm relics and has fashioned a garden with rusty pockets of color. Reggie has arranged his collection underneath a stand of pines that creates a soft and dappled shade. The combination of plants in this old wooden tool chest is a magnificent mix of textures. I really like the coarse textured leaves of the red and green red flash caladium and the wild and crazy mojito elephant ear with its medium green leaves with dark purple flecks. And look at the beautiful flowers of Sun Patience compact blush pink, which have a sparkling iridescence. Rounding out this combination planting are Versa lime green coleus and fine textured straight and narrow blue arrow juncus. Reggie has a couple of really interesting abandoned plow implements. One he has adorned with a planter containing radiant red flowering bronze leaf begonia with the blue arrow juncus. The other plow I think is the most fun in the shade garden. The planter contains the green and purple oyster plant and the blue-green foliage of firewitch dianthus, plus a delicately balanced old shoe and ancient fuel can. But I wonder what happened to the other shoe. This used wash tub is a great example of unusual plant combinations. A colorful mix of flowering vinca is complemented with green and white moonstruck hosta and variegated spider plant, with the little spiders hanging over the edge reaching for the ground. Reggie shows us it's a great idea to be creative with repurposed materials and craft colorful pockets in your landscape. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Gary says the more weather resistant your yard art, the longer it will last, but don't worry if it shows the effects of weather. Weathered yard art has a beauty all its own. And the feature segment today, September is National Honey Month. You'll visit Broke Tea Honey and Prairie Blossom Bee Farm, two of the many small beekeepers in Mississippi. Time now for the markets with Leighton. And Leighton, you say there's good news for the lumber and forestry product sectors?
That's right, Artist. July construction spending in the United States, meaning the purchase of lumber and other items made from timber, reached a 4-year high. Now, in other news from the markets this week, the size of the U.S. corn crop seems to be under debate. A producer survey shows fewer bushels of soybeans are expected nationwide, while the number of cattle on feed comes in below pre-report estimates. Reports of declining conditions for the Midwest corn crop, along with the status of this year's U.S. harvest, are big factors influencing grain trade as September gets underway. Analyst John Roach likens the current situation between farmers and end users of corn to a game around a card table. He thinks the crop is going to get smaller.
So here we are in kind of a middle of a poker game, trying to figure out, okay, what's the next card going to be? Are we going to find out that the crop has actually been reduced more than the people in Chicago were thinking? And I'm in that camp. I think the crop is a little smaller than is currently being traded in Chicago. I think the users will blink first. I think that the corn market is too cheap. I think cash corn values for delivery into the main part of harvest will rise, not decline, as we move into that harvest period. I think that as we get into that period of time, it may well be the basis in carrying charges that have to do a lot of the work. And I anticipate that we'll see firmer prices and better price opportunities than what we have today.
If the results of Allendale Incorporated's annual producer survey hold, this year's U.S. soybean crop may be much smaller than the USDA last estimated. Soybeans are projected by Allendale at 2.98 billion bushels with an average yield of 39 bushels per acre. Now that compares to the U.S. government's August 12th guess of 3.255 billion bushels with a yield of over 42.5 bushels per acre. Thursday morning, wheat futures were trading steady to 3 cents lower. U.S. export business for wheat has been good. That's one reason analyst Virgil Robinson is kind of scratching his head, trying to figure out why this market is trending the way it is.
The reason WASDE is forecasting that all wheat varieties globally, we will in fact enjoy record production. Now that's part of the discussion. The other part is they're also forecasting an increase in disappearance to the extent that the stocks to use ratio, which you oftentimes hear us use, which is kind of a proxy for supply. Bigger the ratio, more supply, smaller the ratio, theoretically smaller supply, actually declines globally as well as in the U.S. So I'm at wit's end here to explain the depth of the decline here in wheat futures, particularly since we've seen a real good start to our export program this year. Bottom line, I think it's a poor place to finalize the price of soft, hard, and hard spring wheat. I would defer that, if one can, to a later date. I think there'll be a better opportunity.
This week, the results of some new research by Mississippi State's Deer Lab were announced. A portion of the information is the subject for our trivia quiz. Here's the question: what row crop contributes most to the size of white-tailed deer? Is the answer soybeans, sweet potatoes, corn, or grain sorghum? I'll tell you at the end of the markets.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar and the rest of the markets. Leighton Spann reports why pre-report cattle estimates were wrong. In the feature segment today, interested in local food? We'll try some honey from your local Mississippi beekeeper.
Committed? Absolutely. People rely on me. I don't take that lightly. Sure, sometimes we get out of sync and things feel forced. That's when the commitment kicks in. You buckle down, hammer it out, and keep it together for everybody involved. So, yeah, I'm completely committed to my marriage. Till death do us part. Commit to your marriage.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. A workshop on managing wild pig damage will take place Wednesday, September 18th in Meridian. Location is the East Mississippi Electric Power Association Auditorium. That's on Highway 39. The cost is $20 including lunch, and you need to register by September 16th. You can do that by mail or go to our Farmweek Calendar for an online link. A workshop will take place starting September 24th on helping Mississippi's farm and ranch women to plan the transfer of their operations from one generation to the next. The workshops will be held 5 consecutive Tuesday evenings starting September 24th. The cost is $25, which will include a light supper each week. The hours are 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. It will be offered at 4 locations: Collins, Indianola, Raymond, and Starkville. For more information, contact your county extension service office or look on the Farm Week website calendar and Facebook page. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
We move into the livestock markets now. It seems that some of the pre-report estimates ahead of the last cattle on feed stats were off the mark. That's where I began a Thursday morning interview with Extension Ag economist Brian Williams as we discussed the beef sector heading into fall. So Brian, let's look back. How did the final on-feed numbers line up with the pre-report estimates?
Well, just to run through the numbers real quick, for the total number on feed, we were expecting before the report around 95.8%, and then the report came in at actually 94%. For the placements, we were expecting around 97.5%, and the report came in, the final number was 90%. And then for the marketings, we're expecting 104.4%, and the final number came in at 105% of a year ago.
So we definitely had a shock factor, we could describe it, within those numbers.
We did, particularly on the placements. When we look at the pre-report expectations, it was well below what even the lowest estimate was.
Has the market reacted since then as you might expect given what those numbers had to say, or what has been the reaction?
No, it didn't. We expected, or when the report came out, we thought it was actually going to be a bullish report and boost the prices, but the report came out late on Friday afternoon, and then Monday the prices for feeder cattle at least finished sharply down, and then fed cattle finished down just a little bit.
Now that same week we had a monthly cold storage report come out. Is that a stronger barometer for the beef sector, or how would you describe that in relation to the on-feed report?
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I saw this as a really positive report. Month to month, we saw a 4% decrease in the number or in the amount of beef in storage, and so that really was a sign that this is normally at a time of year when it when it increases, when the storage increases, and so that was kind of a sign that that consumption is picking up.
All right, recently we've had the Zeal Max controversy. 2 major packers in the country saying they're no longer going to take beef that had been fed Zeal Max.
Yeah.
What's that impact going to be?
Well, I don't think, initially it was a bit of a shock to the market, but I don't think now it's too much of a deal. When we look at the feedlots, this is who it's really going to impact, and we saw the final weights increasing over the last couple of years, and a lot of that's because of the Zeal Max, but there's also substitutions out there that can just be, put in place of the Zeal Max.
Before our new feature story, let's check the trivia answer for this week, and the correct choice is A, soybeans. Extension researcher Bronson Strickland says white-tailed deer eat all parts of soybean plants, which gives them the nutrients required to grow larger bodies.
In the feature segment today, Farm Week's Amy Taylor reports on a part of the local food movement that's being celebrated this month.
Artists, with September being National Honey Month, it's the ideal time to showcase the natural honey products offered by local businesses in Mississippi. Broke Tea Honey of Philadelphia and Prairie Blossom Bee Farm of Mayhew are seeing great success after making the most of educational resources offered by the Mississippi State University Extension Service. By remaining updated on the latest information and beekeeping practices, these two operations are maximizing their business efficiency. As consumers learn more about the positive effects of natural food products and shopping locally, two Mississippi businesses are striving to enhance the quality of their honey products. Owners and operators of Broke Tea Honey in Philadelphia, along with Prairie Blossom Bee Farm located in Mayhew, say the knowledge they gain from Mississippi State University Extension Service helps their businesses thrive. MSU Extension apiculturist Dr. Jeff Harris explains the services offered.
So we do a little bit of everything: workshops, presentations to beekeeping groups, a lot of training. We also are in the, making literature that will be distributed for beekeepers, so on how to handle some of the new problems like the varroa mite and the small hive beetle. We're working on that now. So we do written literature and education, we do on-hands education and workshops, and then I do one-on-one with beekeepers a lot.
Additionally, Dr. Harris says research is being conducted to develop pest-resistant bees that can stand up to the varroa mite. Johnny Thompson runs Broke Tea Honey with his parents, Kenneth and Joan, in Philadelphia, where they sell natural honey and queen bees for breeding. It's difficult to briefly explain the process of beekeeping, but Thompson gives a quick summary of how a hive operates.
There's three types of bees in every hive. You've got the workers are all females. The queen is female, but the queen is the only one that's able to lay eggs. So she lays all the eggs, does all the reproduction for the hive. The males are the drones, and they're there just to mate with any queen.
In order to grow the queen, Thompson says the fertilized cell of the bee is placed in what's called a nuke.
When we put a queen cell in that nuke, she hatches, emerges the next day, and stays in that nuke 3 weeks. She will go out and mate, can't come back, start laying, and 3 weeks later we will go in and take that queen out of that nuke, marker, cage her, sell her, and then the next day put a queen cell back in and start that cycle over again.
Thompson says because Broke Tea honey bees are not exposed to any chemically treated plants, the honey is as natural as it gets. Mark Lewis, who owns and operates Prairie Blossom Bee Farm with his wife Carrie, says watching bees cure the honey is fascinating and explains the harvesting process.
They cure it to a 17% moisture, and when they get the moisture correct, they put a wax cap on it. And once they've capped an entire frame and then they've capped an entire box, I take that whole box with me to the house to be harvested, and you can cut the caps off with a knife, or you can scrape them off with a what they call a decapping tool. And once you take them off, you put them in like a centrifuge that spins it around. You orient them to the sides, and the centrifugal force spins the honey out. The honey flows to the bottom of the tank. You run it through a filter, and you're done.
Lewis says local honey makes a great gift, and local soap products are also produced at Prairie Blossom Bee Farm. Kenneth Thompson with Broke Tea says one of the unique aspects of selling honey is the fact that no 2 jars of honey are exactly the same shade of color.
Well, it depends on what the bees are collecting. Different flowers give off different shades of nectar. So that nectar, then when it turns into honey, when it's dried down to the honey, it's all different colors.
Thompson says Broke Tea sells a spring, summer, and fall honey. Additionally, Joan Thompson says there are health benefits involved in eating pure honey.
Well, one of your benefits is it's one of your best antibiotics. I've had people come that said they had gone to doctors for years for their sinus and allergies, And since they've been eating the honey, they haven't been to the doctor in 2 years. And each year we do what we call Ag in the Classroom, which we do in the north, central, and southern parts of the state in June. We go in, we teach the teachers so they can teach the children where their food comes from.
Thompson says honey is also a healthy and natural sugar substitute for cooking. In addition to selling honey, she also started making lip balm from leftover beeswax. When asked about his views on the fear of bee populations dying out, Kenneth Thompson says he isn't worried.
Bees has been with us since the beginning of time, and they're going to continue to be with us. It's just there's bumps in the road and going to continue to be bumps in the road, but there's going to be people that can handle it and take care of them, and they're going to make it.
As demand increases for natural, locally produced food sources, Broke Tea Honey, Prairie Blossom Bee Farm, and Mississippi State University Extension Service say they look forward to being part of a movement that helps generate a healthy population for our bees. I'm Amy Taylor reporting. You can watch this feature story on Prairie Blossom Bee Farm and Broke Tea Honey again on our Farm Week website, Facebook page, or YouTube. We'll have their contact information listed as well. That's farmweek.msucares.com.
Thanks, Amy. Good job. We are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, how do you pass on the family farm to the next generation?
Can it be smooth, or does it have to be rough? You'll visit a family where the son is taking over, and while it's not always painless, they say it will work.
Also next week, Beefing Up the Bulldogs. This annual event treats the Mississippi State University football team to some fun and a steak while they learn about Mississippi agriculture.
In Southern gardening, garden walls. Don't think of them as barriers. They can be more than that. They can contribute to a garden's beauty.
Well, for the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.